It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Our featured story tonight, we're going to be talking once again all about the Charlie Kirk assassination from last week. And we have a couple of big things that we still need to sort out here. I actually intended to get into a lot of this last night, but ran out of time. Our featured story tonight, we're going to be talking all about the left-wing conspiracy to frame the Groypers for Charlie Kirk's murder. And I'm sure you've heard this, seen it on social media. Maybe your boomer parents asked you about it. I can't tell you how many people texted me over the weekend and said, my mom just asked me if I'm a Groyper and did I know the killer? Did that happen to you? Did it happen to you? I got at least a dozen text messages over the weekend that went exactly like that. And that is because it seems that there was a concerted effort. I don't think this was organic. Something is up here to implicate or frame the Groypers for the murder. And at first, I thought the narrative was completely ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I guess I should say I thought it was so ridiculous that the idea that it would gain any currency or traction anywhere among any demographic seemed equally as far-fetched. And yet, this narrative has exploded, and it's everywhere. And a poll came out the other day. It said that a quarter of Generation Z believe that Charlie Kirk's assassin was a Republican. And that is due to a deliberate disinformation campaign to obfuscate the facts of the case, particularly concerning the messages inscribed on the cartridges or the bullet casings, and to mischaracterize those messages as deriving from the right wing, which is absurd on its face. And so we'll talk all about it tonight. We'll get into the conspiracy theory, the narrative. We'll talk about why they said what they said. We'll debunk it. And we'll get into why it is that there's such a deliberate effort to do this. I have a very bad feeling about all of it. And I have to tell you, ever since the events that took place last Wednesday, I've had a very bad feeling about all of it. It is possible, and it might even be likely at this stage, that Charlie Kirk was murdered by one or a group of radical left-wing activists. I think that's possible. I think it's likely. But I feel like there's something more to the story here. I just can't shake the feeling. And, you know, we're in the middle of a very interesting time right now in the whole world order. There's a lot of weirdness about this year in particular. I can't be the only one that feels this way. And this is concerning the situation in the Middle East, of course, this new Trump administration, which something is not right with this president and something is not right with this administration. And something just feels off about this one. Every single day since, and every development, every new revelation, something feels wrong. Can't place it, can't put my finger on it, and we have to deal with the evidence that we have. But something doesn't feel right about it. So we'll talk all about that conspiracy. We're also going to talk tonight about the Charlie Kirk Data Foundation. This is actually some good news. Now for some good news. I think this is incredible. On my show last week, I told everybody watching that we should not retaliate against the left, at least not with violence. I said that would be wrong, that would be sinful, it would be destabilizing for America. That being said, I said that the left has to have some penalty. And by the left, I don't mean every Democrat voter, I don't mean every liberal, I don't mean every leftist for that matter, every transgender person. I said in particular, it is the people that believe it is okay to celebrate political violence because they think political violence is okay. Those people have to be identified, isolated, and ostracized. And understand what I'm saying. This is not a war on the left. It's not a war on the political left per se in itself. It is a war on the radicals that are effectively inciting further terrorism, because that's what this is. That term is thrown around all the time now, but a public execution of a high-profile political figure for a political end, I mean, that's the definition of terrorism, if there is one. People that are egging on or celebrating terrorism in a sensitive time like this, on some level, I believe that is an inciting action. Not legally, but I think politically we can all understand that rewarding that behavior encourages more of it. And politically, that has to be deterred. The violence and the incitement of it. Now, in response to the killing on Wednesday, there has been this unbelievable effort by the right. A lot of people have said it feels like Sisyphus finally rolled the boulder on top of the hill. To get the right wing to take advantage, and I don't think that's a dirty word, to be opportunistic, to take a crisis and to wield power effectively, to disempower our enemies. And by enemies, I mean, people that want to kill us, people that see someone that shares our opinions murdered and celebrate it, who would plausibly equally celebrate our murder. I never thought I'd see the day that the right wing would be willing or able to do that. They're willing and able to do it against anti-Semites, against Muslims, against many other groups, but to see it wielded effectively against our real adversaries or one group of our real adversaries, I think is incredible. And in particular, there's an effort to create a database with, I think it's up to 80,000 names. 80,000 names with the posts, what they said, what they did, of presumably mostly left-wing people that were cheering on and celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And I think it's necessary. Enough is enough. It is necessary. If anything, it's long overdue. And I know that's controversial. We're going to talk about it tonight. I've gotten some criticism. Dan Bilzerian disagreed with this. He texted me today. He said, "You want Palantir to come after us?" And I love Dan. We agree on so much. We disagree on this. Maybe we'll talk about it sometime. And I know a lot of people, I saw Kim Iverson said the same thing. She's incredible also, but I do disagree with her on this. I think it's a good thing. And I'll explain my position on that. Feel free to disagree, but we're going to get into that tonight as well. Also, we will talk about the transcript of the messages between the suspected killer of Charlie Kirk and his transgender boyfriend. They're very weird. And a lot of people have pointed out that the messages are strange. They're stilted. The tone, the vocabulary, there's something off. The prosecutors, or I actually don't know which official released them, but we've gotten some more information about the actual suspected killer. As I said, we got the full transcript of the final conversation he had over social media with his boyfriend. And I'm sure you've all read it. Everybody seems to be on top of this stuff, but I'll read it for you tonight. The conversation, it comes across very strange. And I'll read through it for you tonight, and we'll discuss that. Some people are pointing out that it sounds maybe like a complete fabrication, scripted. Other people are pointing out that it might have been written with the intention of being discovered by law enforcement, maybe to exonerate the partner. But there are some details here that don't sit right with people. So we'll talk about that too. Should be a pretty good show. We're going to get into all of that. Before we do, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. One other thing briefly before we get into all of it, I have to say, there is this phenomenon. People are blaming Israel for Charlie Kirk's death. And last night, I laid out the case. I laid out the case in rigorous detail for the official narrative from the FBI that it was Tyler Robinson, this 22-year-old leftist with a transgender boyfriend. And I pointed out the strengths and the weaknesses or discrepancies in that narrative. I also laid out the circumstantial evidence surrounding this argument that Israel played some role. And I laid out rigorously the strengths and weaknesses of that case too. To the extent that there are strengths, I laid out the possible motivation, the timeline, Charlie Kirk's drift. And it confused a lot of people, I could tell. I saw in the replies to some of the clips, people said, Nick said he doesn't believe it's Israel, but then he made a case as though he believed it was. And I said last night, we don't really have the information we need. We have an official narrative from the FBI, but we can't trust the FBI. I don't trust the FBI. So we can't take that for granted. What's more, there's discrepancies in the official narrative. We need to get those ironed out. There have been some tall claims made about Charlie Kirk and his state of mind concerning the Israel issue at the time of his death. These claims have not been fully substantiated by evidence. Now, we can create a narrative based on hearsay and based on maybe a subjective interpretation of things that he said. And there is private testimony that counts in the record. But I have not seen a ton of receipts, or any for that matter. I actually don't see a direct connection in that narrative either. We have a motive, maybe. We have some circumstantial thoughts about it. We don't have much in the way of concrete hard evidence. We've got some claims, secondhand anonymous sources. We've got this piece from Max Blumenthal. That does not make the case for me. It's not doing it. And I got to tell you the truth just really quickly before we get into it tonight. I think that case is blowing up right now. And we talked about it last night. Max Blumenthal seems to be the source of this idea. Max Blumenthal, who is a Jewish leftist who smeared yours truly, Max Blumenthal, the Jewish leftist, created this article with unnamed sources, anonymous sources, that create this narrative that Charlie Kirk was on the verge of flipping on Israel and is effectively implying that the donors wanted him dead. That seems to be the insinuation. And they'll run from that and they'll hide from that, but that's obviously the insinuation. Let's not be obtuse. And to make that case, they told this story about Bill Ackman, which we went over last night, and they insinuated that Charlie Kirk walked away from this meeting with Bill Ackman, a Jewish billionaire, in August, feeling blackmailed, feeling afraid. And we now have receipts and testimony and names about that meeting, but from the pro-Israel side, from Xavier DeRusso, from Bill Ackman, from Seth Dillon. And they all claim that Charlie Kirk arranged that meeting and that it was basically a run-of-the-mill influencer retreat, that Charlie helped organize, plan, set out the invitations. They have the receipts for it. And it blows up. If that was supposed to be a piece of evidence in the Israel conspiracy, the evidence that has been provided by Ackman and the other attendees with receipts, which has not been refuted by Blumenthal or Candace Owens, who promoted the story, it just blows up their narrative. And their response to the receipts has not been to refute one thing that they've said, but to say, well, we never claimed that Charlie Kirk was blackmailed. This was what Blumenthal said tonight. In the original piece, Blumenthal said Charlie felt blackmailed after that meeting where he was screamed at and it seemed like there was an intervention. He was ambushed. Bill Ackman said, no, Charlie organized the event and it was fine. Blumenthal comes out and says, well, what we meant was that Charlie felt morally blackmailed because one of the attendees was mad at him. Okay, so that's pretty disingenuous. I don't trust Max Blumenthal. I do not trust him. I don't trust his father, Sidney Blumenthal. I do not trust this guy. This guy is another Nebish. This guy's a left-wing Jew. And you know who's implicated in this killing? The left. The left, so far, is implicated in the killing. And, you know, for all these people that are hopped up on the Palantir, that sort of thing, look, the radical left still exists. Go to Portland. Go to Seattle. Take it from someone who's been there, done that. I was at Charlottesville. The radical left is real. And no doubt the radical left is deeply in bed with institutional forces to a disturbing degree. But these piece of shit communist progressive types, they are out there. And they are violent, and they do hate you. They do think you're a Nazi. They thought Charlie Kirk was a Nazi. Palantir and the powers that be, they exacerbate these tensions, but they don't create them. They exacerbate tensions between whites and blacks, conservatives and progressives, but they don't create them. They don't create conservatives and progressives. So let us not fall into the trap of locking arms with communists that hate God and hate America and want us dead. Let us not fall into the trap of thinking for 1 second that there is not a radical element in the country that wants you and your family murdered for being basic conservatives, let alone far-right nationalists. Do not kid yourself, and don't be suckered into thinking that. I said it last night, we're in a multi-front war. And we're sort of committing the same fallacy. It's sort of like how we used to say, conservatives used to tell us, oh, it's the powers that be that want whites and blacks to fight each other. The rich want whites and blacks to fight. That's like, really? Well, go to the south side of Chicago and tell them that. Tell them that yourself in person. Why don't you get a really nice car? Why don't you get I don't know what cars they're stealing these days. A Hellcat. I think those are really popular to steal. Get in a really nice souped up Hellcat, drive to the south side of Chicago, and why don't you tell those black people, hey man, the rich are trying to divide us. You and me, we got to stick together. Similarly, go to Portland and pull up on one of these Antifa communes and tell them, hey man, look, I think Hitler did nothing wrong, but you know, people like us, we got to unite. It's Palantir they'll kill you. So don't kid yourself. And yes, Jewish rightists, Jewish Zionists on the right, yes, they will scaremonger about Antifa to rally us to the side of the pro-Israel right. It doesn't mean that that is not a real faction. And anyway, so the other people that I saw, which was interesting, so I covered this on my show last night, and I saw all the clips on Twitter were getting bombarded by the American Communist Party, which is run by Jackson Hinkle and Infrared Haas, who is some brownoid from Michigan, some mudslime brownoid. And so my posts were being brigaded. They said, oh, you're pro-Israel. You are with the Israelis because you don't. Did you know that after this murder last Wednesday, the American Communist Party wiped its Discord server? I wonder why that is. Could it be that maybe Tyler Robinson and the people he was involved in, maybe they were in the ACP Discord server? Maybe they were involved in that, John Brown gun club or one of those tranny gun clubs out there in Utah. Now, did Jackson Hinkle's group, did they wipe their Discord out of an abundance of caution? Seems like a guilty conscience, maybe. Seems like they're afraid of what's in there. And if you don't come and say, oh, Israel killed Charlie Kirk, their top goy, if you're not all in on that conspiracy, they say you're a shill. Well, I don't know. It seems like they're trying to save their own asses. I don't think it was Israel this time. I think it was the left. And I think that people like Blumenthal and Jackson Hinkle and others, I think they'd love for you to think this is an Israel operation to divide the right and left because this came from the left. Anyway, I just saw that. I saw some of these things. It seemed to be coordinated, and every account I tapped on, it was all communists, all ACP, hammer and sickle and bio. They're all subscribed to this communist group. That's just what they are. I normally don't like to talk about communists. I think that's retarded, but that's what they are. They call themselves MAGA communists, the American Communist Party. That's what they call themselves. So anyway, I think the Israel thing is totally falling apart. And the reason it's falling apart is because Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel. You know it. I know it. We all know it. It's been a week. We can be a little bit more candid now. Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel until the day that he died. And for all these people that want to pull up the private text messages and conversations, I understand that Charlie Kirk didn't want America to fight a ground war in Iran. That doesn't mean he wasn't pro-Israel. I'll give you one example, then we'll get into the newest stuff. The day before he died, Israel bombed Qatar. Huge. That's a huge deal. It's unprecedented. Israel bombed yet another country, added it to the list. They've bombed Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Iran, Tunisia, or the territorial waters of Tunisia. They bombed, there was an infographic out recently. They bombed like a dozen countries. They bombed another one. They bombed Qatar. Do you know who Charlie Kirk brought on to discuss this? Ben Shapiro. And people said, well, but he asked Ben Shapiro these tough questions. Okay, but if you're bringing on Ben Shapiro as the expert on the Middle East, what does that tell you? If I brought on some Chinese national to talk about the war in China, what am I doing? If I brought on some Russian national to talk about the war in Russia, what am I doing? Josh Hammer, a mouthpiece for the Israeli government. He works at Newsweek, used to work for Shapiro. Josh Hammer said in a podcast that he talked to Charlie the week he died, and they went over talking points for how to defend Israel on the campus tour. Charlie's rabbi said the morning of the day he was killed, they talked about strategies to defend Israel. So, time to wake up, guys. Some of this, I'll be the first one to say, the conspiratard schizo thing, it's getting a little out of control. And that's coming from me. I mean, it's like we are truly through the looking glass. When Charlie Kirk is assassinated, people blame Israel. I, who fought Charlie Kirk because he was pro-Israel, am being said to, I'm being said to be covering up that he was killed for this miraculous conversion. If Ben Shapiro was taken out next, and God forbid, would Israel be behind that too? I mean, that would be equally ridiculous. If it was Ben Shapiro on Wednesday, people would be saying, Israel did it. Shapiro was about to become a national socialist. Like, what? It's crazy. Anyway, so that just needs to be said. Like, people talk about, and we talked about it last night. Did Netanyahu give Charlie Kirk $150 million or offer it up? I've heard that claimed. I don't know if that's the dollar amount. I've had friends of mine tell me that, yes, Charlie refused an infusion of cash. I have not heard any receipts that it was $150 million, although that's what's being claimed. And if there is any evidence, I would implore Candace Owens to produce it. Candace Owens, Max Blumenthal, you are insinuating that Israel had a hand in Charlie Kirk's murder. That's what you're doing. If you have evidence, you must produce it. I saw Candace on her show today. She said, if you keep pushing me, then I will name more names. No, it doesn't work like that. You don't get to insinuate that a foreign government killed a high-profile American citizen and then say, I'm going to release the evidence under these conditions. Nah, you need to release the evidence now. She says that she has a copy of the letter that Charlie Kirk sent to Netanyahu. You need to produce that letter. Sorry. You can't drag it out on your show for clicks. Oh, more receipts tomorrow, more receipts behind the paywall, more receipts any day. No, sorry, you got it. Put up or shut up now. It's getting, Charlie Kirk's own pastor, Turning Point USA, is saying it's getting to be offensive almost. So, for someone that wants to get to the bottom of everything and overturn every rock and produce all the receipts, she's not being very forthcoming. Stop with the games. Show us the evidence you have, or stop. Stop insinuating that there are things out there that the public doesn't know. You need to disclose what you have. If you have something that would implicate Israel, everyone needs to see that. Everyone needs to know that. Why withhold it? I saw that clip this evening. She said, if they don't stop coming for me, I'm going to name more names. And so if they stop coming for you, you're going to sit on them forever? You're going to withhold the information indefinitely? What is that? I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. I don't like her whole deal. So, the Max Blumenthal thing, I thought maybe there was something there, but his credibility is in shambles after Bill Ackman put out, and I don't even like Bill Ackman. I mean, I've been talking about Bill Ackman for the past year and a half. Until I'm blue in the face, I've been talking about Bill Ackman, how he shifted to the right after October 7th. He took out Claudine Gay. I mean, we've been all over that guy. Not a fan. But I was also not a fan of Charlie Kirk. And they are mischaracterizing that meeting. They lost credibility on that. It was disingenuous. If there's anything else that they have, now would be the time. Because otherwise, it's just making everybody that has ever criticized Israel look like an asshole right now. And by the way, last thing I'll say on this, I don't doubt that Charlie Kirk was chafing with his Israeli donors. I don't even doubt that at all. I think that's 100% true. The idea that Charlie was becoming defiant, that he was chafing, I mean, that's just a fact. That has been demonstrated. He said that when he was alive. He said that with Megyn Kelly. That's not even in dispute. Were they trying to bribe him? I think that's probably 99% true. I think that's almost a certainty. But the idea that they took him out, that's the part I'm not buying. Was Charlie chafing with them a little bit? So is Trump. So was Biden. So was Obama. So is every president since Reagan. But you know what? There's all the difference in the world between somebody that gets up and says, Israel is our adversary. We need to be against Israel. Israel itself is the issue here. And somebody that says, oh, well, I'm just against the forever wars. I love Israel. I'm pro-Israel, but I'm against the forever wars. I don't love Israel at all. To the extent that I love all people, I love everyone in the world. But Israel as a country is hurting America, and I don't love that. And it's not just the wars. It is a truly global Jewish community, of which Israel is just a part, that is controlling America. And so I even saw Tucker Carlson's show tonight, and this is how Tucker characterized it. He said Charlie loved Israel. Charlie wasn't anti-Israel. He said Charlie wasn't criticizing Israel in a creepy or weird way. He said Charlie just didn't like Netanyahu. Okay, see, something's not right there. And that's the same line that Max Blumenthal, the Jewish leftist, uses. Max Blumenthal doesn't hate Israel. Max Blumenthal's Jewish. Max Blumenthal, as a leftist, doesn't like Israel's right-wing government. Tucker is pro-Israel. He just doesn't like the neocons that support Israel's wars. And Charlie Kirk was no different. So let's just stop pretending now. Let's just cut the shit and let's stop pretending that the top goy, and I don't say that in any way other than that is just descriptive. Let's stop, we could say a lot of nice things. Charlie Kirk was a hard worker. He was courageous. He was talented. I think all of that is true. I think he was a true believing Christian. All of that can be true. At the same time, we all know what he was. And I don't say this to be hurtful, but we all know, why is the whole Trump government going to his funeral? Because he was a partisan for the GOP. Okay, this was a party man. He towed the line on Israel as well as everything else. Let's not, there's a fine line there. Hard worker, talented, sharp, future president, pious, ultimately gunned down, I think, for his Christian convictions on the transgender issue. I think they martyred him for his Christian position. I think a left-wing dirtbag killed him because of his conviction on a matter of faith and morals, and that by itself makes him a martyr, strictly speaking. With all that being said, let us not mythologize and pretend like he was something other than what he was. Seriously. It's just gotten to a point where for the past 6 days, we have had on September 7th, and listen, I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I like Ian Carroll a lot, and I have respect for him. But on September 7th, Ian Carroll said to Charlie Kirk, "You're working for the Jews that killed Christ." On September 11th, we're supposed to believe Charlie Kirk was on the verge of becoming what? He fought the bankers now? Seriously? And we all know that, and listen, and we all know that's true. On September 9th, we would have said he's a shill for Israel. But on September 11th, because he was tragically murdered, now we're going to pretend like he was the second coming of Hitler. That's how they're making it sound. And I think that could not be further from the truth. So, and I say that for no reason other than let's just be honest here about what's going on. Let's just be absolutely truthful. It doesn't take away from, the kind words I have to say about him. It doesn't take away from the fact that he didn't deserve to die. It wasn't a tragedy that happened last week, but it is to say it's getting a little ridiculous now. It's getting a little ridiculous. He was chafing against the same forces that everybody seems to be. I mean, look at this administration. They're leaking they're planting stories in the Washington Post every other week that Donald Trump is calling out Netanyahu on the phone about Qatar, about Iran, about you name it. I mean, everybody in the whole world is frustrated with Israel. Charlie Kirk was no different. But Charlie Kirk towed the line until that tragic day. And the idea that this would be beneficial for Israel in any way, I think is absurd. If anybody is going to fill the vacuum that is left by Kirk or Turning Point, it's going to be people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who are far more outspoken and explicit in their criticism of the Jews in Israel than Kirk ever was. That's a fact. Anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there. Like, you know, it gets to a point where it really does feel like there's a low IQ element that really is just blaming the Jews for everything, blaming Israel. This one, I think we could safely rule out. And that's not to say that he wasn't under pressure. It's not to say that he didn't have a change of heart on some issues. It's not to say that he wasn't grappling with that or wrestling with that in private. As I said, I think that's all true. But the idea that Mossad assassinated him on American soil, as some people seem to be suggesting, with a palm pistol and other ridiculous things, I mean, come on now. There's just no proof of this. There's no proof. There's no motive. I just don't see it. Unless Candace Owens has extraordinary evidence to the contrary, which she is withholding. In that case, she needs to produce it. That's all I have to say on that. We're going to move on, though.
My boy Nick said there's a lot of weirdness going around this year. I have to agree. It definitely seems like ever since probably 2019 with what happened in 2020 brewing, it seems like we've lost our minds. We've hated more than we've ever hated before. It seems that everybody feels like they're a victim, feels like they're being oppressed. I don't know if this was planned out, but it just seems like there's just a lot more chaos than normal, that things are moving at a faster pace. This is just what I've been feeling. I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, but it definitely seems like the chaos has been ramped up. And when it comes to the chaos, it's almost as if before it seemed like the powers that be, whoever that is, would be trying to tone down the temperature, or would almost be using chaos as an opportunity to look like a hero figure in toning down the chaos, right? Providing solutions. Now, all the solutions that are being presented are more radical than the problem that they're acting as if they're trying to solve. This is how we land in a place where we're fighting over stuff that 20 years ago, it would be very simple to agree on. Like, should there be tampons in boys' bathrooms? Should boys be playing sports against women? And then on the other side, well, I got to be honest. And this is why I did end up voting for Trump, because when it comes to the cultural issues, I think that the Democrats, the liberals, they're pushing the woke ideology stuff, cultural issues, far more radically than the issues that are on the right. When it comes to immigration policies, when it comes to the abortion policies, when it comes to reversing a lot of the DEI efforts, these may seem radical, but they're just in a different category of radical. Like, the liberal radical is, this just doesn't make any sense for anybody. The conservative radical, perhaps people say, well, they're doing for what's in their best interest rather than all of America. The stuff that's being pushed, whether it's the trans stuff or the things that I just mentioned on the left with the liberals, I don't know who that's good for. And in my opinion, it's really playing around with the livelihoods of our young children by promoting these things. Of course, we deal with things, but to promote a lot of these lifestyles, in my opinion, are causing a lot of harm to our children and putting our kids at risk. But as I'm looking at my notes, all the stuff that I just mentioned, you know, the wars, the woke stuff, the alien sightings, you know, now they're allowing these things to come out. We just saw a couple of people from the Navy at the House committee hearing where they're explaining how they saw something come out of the water and multiple people saw it and it attached to another UFO.
When I first witnessed off the port bridge wing the object moving out of the water, what I thought was originally just a light on the water or something on the horizon, and surfacing and going into the air, I then knew it was an air contact. But as an air controller myself, I started thinking and going through kind of like my checklist in my mind. Could it be a helo? But it's not blinking lights. So I then realized this is something I've never seen before. So the speed itself, just going from the horizon to about maybe 4,000 feet in the air was very slow, slowly rising. And then it sped up. I'm not an expert at, knowing specific speeds of aircraft just by visual eye, but I would say probably 1-2 Mach instantly into the rest of the formation. I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other 3 objects until I went back to my radar and also utilized Sapphire to see that, in fact, there were 4 total. And then again, when they all left after a certain amount of time, it was nearly instantaneous.
So you spotted it visually first, Chief, and then went back to your radar, or did you guys spot it on radar first?
Radar first, because that was my watch station.
And then you went out to the port bridge wing, is that correct?
Correct, to verify what I saw on my radar.
What range was it at, Chief, when you were able to see it visibly?
I would say about 7 nautical miles, 7 to 8 nautical miles of a light from the ship.
Wow. Thank you. I yield back.
Crazy stuff. It's now allowed to come out, I would say, where before they were trying to control that. And it almost seems, I was clowning earlier, but it legit seems that we are living out like Will Smith's movie catalog. We're living out the I Am Legend. We got the Men in Black with the aliens. We got the iRobot with the AI. We got the Independence Day that they're prepping us for with this UFO on the way here and all these sightings. Is that where humanity's finally going to come together, when we're up against the alien race? Shoot, you got the Ali. Think about it. What did Ali lose his boxing license for? For opposing the war, the Vietnam War. You got people opposing all these other wars going on right now, whether it's Israel, Palestine, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, or the various other wars that are going on. Emancipation. A lot of people didn't see that Will Smith movie. But a lot of people think about it. Emancipation, what was that about? Slavery, right? Well, now, what did I say earlier? Now is the time where everybody just feels like they're a victim. Everybody feels like they're oppressed. This is probably the point in time where every side, every group feels that they are the victim and they are being oppressed, and that something is holding them back and the country is not working in their favor. They don't have that mindset of asking what you can do for your country, not what your country can. No, it's ask what your country can do for you. It's all embracing victimhood. And then, of course, you got the pursuit of happiness with the homeless problems that we have. So it definitely seems like a whole bunch of Will Smith movies just being played out in the last few years. Maybe I'm bugging. I don't know. Y'all tell me if y'all feeling the same way. All right, so we got the funniest moment of the show where Nick talking about the elite. They're trying to divide and conquer us. And he was like, yo, go to Chicago and tell them, like, yo, they're trying to divide and conquer us. What did he say? He said, go in the, he said, when you go down there, go in the Hellcat. That's not funny, bro. That's not funny. And when Nick's talking about Ben Shapiro and how Charlie Kirk brought on Ben Shapiro, we're going to elaborate more on it next video. But Nick makes a lot of points that I think a lot of people may be missing. Do y'all see it as this, where Nick is kind of torn right now, where he's obviously showing Charlie Kirk a certain amount of appreciation and respect, right, in his passing. But with everybody else out here, whether it's Tucker, whether it's Candace Owens, a few others who are now saying that he was against Israel in some ways, and I shouldn't say against Israel, but against Bibi Netanyahu, and trying to frame him as somebody that was opposing us supporting Israel, opposing these wars that we're getting involved in. Regardless of who he was and what he was saying in his private conversations, whether with Candace or whether with Tucker or whether with Dave Smith, that does not mean that that's who he was to the public. Just because he had these hesitations later on, maybe, and he was moving in a different direction when it came to his viewpoint on Israel, he was not that in front of the camera. He was not that. He was a pro-Israel person. He was a pro-Israel supporter, regardless of whether or not he liked Netanyahu. He never let us know that he had an issue with Netanyahu. Why not let everybody know that you have an issue with Netanyahu if you do? Maybe that'll encourage other people to feel courageous enough to speak out on Netanyahu and the things that he has going on and the genocide that he's committing against Palestine right now, if that's what you believe. Because Nick Fuentes has been the person that's been calling this stuff out. He's been the person that's been facing all the heat that comes along with speaking your truth out loud for the world to hear, rather than just saying it to your group chat, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Dave Smith. So then in your passing, they come out and are almost, I don't want to say that they're trying to change the narrative or rewrite history, but now because Bibi Netanyahu is trying to do that, now they're on the other end saying, well, hold up. First off, he didn't like you, Bibi. Second off, he was pushing against these things when it came to Israel and us supporting these things when it comes to what Israel's doing in that Middle Eastern region. Now, that all may have been true, but when you're not doing it in public, when you're not facing the metaphoric bullets that come your way from a guy from saying the things that a Nick Fuentes says, it's not the same. It's not the same. And we don't have to paint him in that picture. We can paint him in the picture of exactly who he was. Exactly who he was. Was he changing stuff privately? Perhaps, but that's not who it was publicly, if we're just being honest. And the reason why I think Nick has every right to speak on it from that standpoint is because he is taking this battle on. He's been taking this battle on. He's had the courage to speak out about the things that it may have taken Charlie Kirk years to either develop the courage or to get to that understanding standpoint where it's like, hold on, this is not good for America. So I think Nick has every right to speak on those things and to separate the two, because they're not the same. It seems like in Charlie Kirk's passing, a lot of his friends are almost trying to make it seem like he was pushing what Nick Fuentes is pushing. And it's just not that. Let's be real. That last interview that Charlie Kirk did with Ben Shapiro, that was a softball interview. Nobody would have praised him without his passing for the questions that he was asking, the style in which he was asking those questions. He was saying certain things tongue in cheek. You're joking around saying like, well, Ben, you know, Israel and the Jews control the media. You're joking around about something that a lot of people actually believe. So it's kind of like, are you really asking the question? Are you pushing Ben Shapiro? Are you challenging him the way that you challenge Gavin Newsom? I don't think so. So there was still something there that, based on what Candace, Tucker, and Dave Smith are now bringing out, that he was not comfortable coming out and actually addressing. Forget you telling Tucker, no, do your thing. Take it as far as you want to take it. If he agreed with that, why didn't he take it there? So there were some hesitations, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are comfortable pushing certain things that others are not. However, I think that we should be very accurate in reporting what those people were pushing, because what it does is it takes away from the appreciation for others who are actually willing to jump out there and address the things like Nick is addressing it. So I can understand him feeling some tight way with that. And let me be clear. I don't even think it's about whether or not Israel had some type of involvement with Charlie Kirk and what happened. I don't even think it's not even about that for me. The reason why is because I don't have the information. When the facts come out, if certain things come out, then I'll address that. But for me, it's not even directly about that. It's about the fact that this is only being entertained as a possibility, where Netanyahu is being asked on Newsmax if he actually had anything to do with it. It's only being entertained because Israel and the Jewish population, the most powerful ones, have such a stronghold on American politics They have such a stronghold on Donald Trump. And anybody that says otherwise, to me, isn't being genuine. That's the only reason why this scenario is being entertained the way that it's being entertained, in my opinion. It's because we see Democrats and Republicans being controlled by AIPAC. The politicians come out. Dude just came on Breakfast Club the other day, and he was, I forget what role he was, something high up on the Democratic side. He actually called himself. He said, yeah, Israel has, or AIPAC has a lot of control. And then he said a lot of influence.
AIPAC has a lot of power over both parties, right? There are people in the parties in which AIPAC is very influential on, in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
He started to say control, then he said influence. Look, this is plain as day to see. Israel is either running our government, or at the very least, Israel is being prioritized by our government. And I would say being prioritized above our own country. That's why Nick Fuentes has the following that he has. That's why Charlie Kirk was perhaps having some epiphany and enlightenment moment where he was realizing like, yo, actually all the people that I'm leading, they're actually pushing me in a direction, because while I'm over here supporting Israel by any means necessary, that's not even how they feel about it. America does not want to support Israel first. It's nothing against Israel. Well, for a lot of people, it's nothing against Israel. For some people, it is. But regardless, a lot of that disdain or a lot of that discomfort, whatever it is along that spectrum, a lot of that's caused by our country prioritizing Israel before we prioritize America. Nick pointed out the difference between him and Charlie Kirk when he says this. There's a difference between someone who says I'm against forever wars and someone who's willing to say, I think powerful Jewish people in Israel are hurting and controlling America. There's a difference between someone who says I'm against forever wars and someone who is willing to say, I think powerful Jewish people in Israel are hurting and controlling America. This is the same reason why Nick gets upset when people platform Dave Smith. So Dave Smith, I don't know if y'all familiar, I rock with Dave Smith. I appreciate his balanced perspective, has a lot of knowledge, well-researched. I appreciate Dave Smith. I always walk away from his debates not only being educated, but entertained. I mean, he's a comedian, so he has that impact. But when Dave Smith is brought on a lot of these platforms to talk about Israel's influence on America, it's almost like a safety net where the host of that podcast or whoever's platforming Dave Smith, they can sit back and say, well, yo, he's Jewish. He's Jewish, so this can't be anti-Semitic. He's Jewish. Meanwhile, those same people, they would never platform a Nick Fuentes. Those podcasters feeling the need to be safe because Dave Smith can call out the very same things, or Dave Smith can call out Bibi Netanyahu. Dave Smith can call out the Israeli government. Nick is willing to take it further. And at the very least, why would you not entertain the things that he's saying? Have a conversation with it on the podcast. Why does the narrative have to be controlled by Dave Smith simply because he's a Jewish American? So therefore, it almost seems like, and I'm sure I've heard Nick say this, that only Jewish people are allowed to comment on the Jewish issues, right? Only Jewish people can call out what Israel's doing in Bibi Netanyahu. Nah. If you're an American and you're paying taxes first and foremost, and your tax dollars are going to Israel and contributing to whatever agenda, war efforts they have going on, you deserve to have a voice. You deserve to have a voice. So overall, I think what Nick is saying, or what I'm hearing Nick say, is you don't have to act like Charlie was me. You villainize me. A lot of people villainize me. A lot of people won't platform me. But now you're trying to make Charlie Kirk in his passing seem as if he was pushing against Bibi Netanyahu and pushing against Israel more than he actually was. He may have been doing that in the group message with y'all, but he was not doing that in public. Nick is doing it in public. Nick is allowing everybody to hear and see, right, exactly how he feels on these topics, exactly how he feels on these situations, no matter what comes from it. If he's taken off of a platform, if he can't open up a bank account. We have to understand that somebody who's going through all those things for speaking out against Israel, for calling a lot of these same things out that people are just now starting to feel comfortable calling out, we can understand how he feels that he should be platformed. His voice should be heard. He's the one taking all the shots from speaking on these things. But meanwhile, people only are platforming other people because they're only comfortable platforming those other people. Perhaps it's a courage thing. Perhaps people are nervous. You know, you platform somebody and you may lose your donations, just like Charlie Kirk was saying to Tucker Carlson. I'm losing a lot of my support and donors because I'm having you at the event. So what are y'all thoughts? Does Nick have a right to stand on the things he's standing on? Is he right? Do you think Charlie Kirk was thinking along the lines of Nick? Do you think he was somewhere in between? But do you think that we need to, and I'm not even going to say that we should, but do you think that we need to give him public credit for private convos? Because I can understand how that would be a slap in the face for the people that are actually taking the risk to have those stances in public. So I'll leave it at that. I know Nick finished off saying or asking, calling out, however you want to put it, Candace Owens to produce the evidence. And I saw him put on X, he was clowning a little bit. And they got it both. We're going to address it a little later, but if they both just got rid of their pettiness towards each other, I think they would be able to work very well together. Who knows if that'll happen though. But appreciate y'all tapping in as always. I'm gonna make sure that I get this video out as early as possible for y'all, and I'll see you on the next one.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.